Since abortion is a conversation that's back on the scene, let's talk about it. I will be looking at Ben Shapiro's arguments because nothing's better than two men talking about legislation that has no effect on their bodies whatsoever. Progress. Now here's my broad view. Abortions should be 100% legal, they should be safe, and hopefully not very common. I think you can be pro-life and pro-choice at the same time. Most people actually are. You can choose not to get an abortion, but you shouldn't deny others that same liberty. Especially since it is a fact that an abortion ban does not decrease abortions, it just makes them incredibly unsafe. But here's how the big anti-abortion advocate Ben Shapiro approaches this subject, with a lot of feelings and not necessarily a lot of facts, starting by describing a partial birth abortion to make his argument that this is representative of all abortions.
This is a baby it was a picture of a baby that was aborted by Kermit Gosnell.
Now this is a partial birth abortion where the fetus has viability outside the body. It is illegal, hence the person who committed this crime was found guilty and is now in prison. But since we're talking facts, 92% of legal US abortions take place in the first 13 weeks inside the first trimester, okay? It's usually an incredibly difficult decision followed by a very simple process that involves taking a hormone pill. In some instances, there's also a surgical procedure, but it is not a baby being killed. So this photo is not representative of anything remotely like what takes place the vast majority of time, which, by the way, is exactly what people want to make illegal. As a matter of fact, it's shameful that someone who claims to care so much about facts would try to sway others with such a transparently emotional appeal and basically lie to his followers. But back to you, Ben. Describe us the horrific details of the incredibly rare and illegal procedure of partial birth abortions.
It involves the snipping off of the crushing of the skull, the sucking out of the brains. It involves, and these are fully formed children.
Oh. Okay, wait a minute. So now you're past the point of talking about viability outside the womb. You're past the point of even calling them babies. You're just claiming that these are fully formed children, Ben. Yeah? They're playing with Legos and shit inside the womb. Okay, got it. If you're working extra hard to make the case that abortion should be completely illegal because of something that's already illegal, then maybe you've lost the argument from the jump. What are you trying to do here, Ben? And let's talk about late-term abortions. They are different than what Shapiro is describing. They're only legal in 7 states and are very rare, usually reserved for instances where the mother's health is in jeopardy, a previously unknown abnormality is found, or when the fetus cannot live outside the body. The idea that women will be taking on this much more expensive and invasive procedure if it's completely legal is idiotic and is a purely male-driven fantasy. No woman should be forced to carry out an unwanted pregnancy. And the other reality is people are forced into late-term abortions because of the logistical delays imposed on them by the pro-life crowd. Essentially, in red states where women seeking abortions are forced to jump through all kinds of unnecessary hoops and clinics performing abortions are required to deal with ever-increasing red tape and government scrutiny. The pro-life crowd, in its essence, are responsible for more late-term abortions than they're not. And here's another question I can never figure out about pro-lifers who want to make abortion illegal. How far will you go to prosecute those who get back alley abortions? Will you arrest the poor women who cannot afford to keep the baby or won't even survive a pregnancy? If you're pro-life, then why don't you care about the life of the woman carrying the baby? It's proven a million times over that making abortions illegal does little to reduce abortions. It only makes them deadlier, with over 68,000 female deaths per year and over 5 million women permanently disabled annually because of back alley abortions. So why go back to the Stone Age when this is completely preventable? And if you believe that all abortion is murder, then where does life begin? Does life begin at conception? So what are the legal boundaries you'd enforce for that? No more coming? You have to pull out every time or we're gonna arrest you? Sorry, libtards. While I hate these theoretical scenarios that Ben routinely engages in, here's a good one for you to use in the future. If there was a fire in a hospital and you had the option of saving a child, and then on the other side you had 100 fertilized embryos inside of an in vitro fertilization tank, which one would you choose to save? That's technically 100 lives you'd be saving over the one life, right? There's a reason why virtually everyone who's being honest would choose the child. It's because there's a difference between life outside of the body and fertilized eggs.
And it's not a matter of personal choice. Okay, I have a stake in whether my neighbor gets murdered, and I have a stake in whether my neighbor's baby gets murdered too.
Ultimately, if you'd really like to decrease the amount of abortions, you'd push for greater sex ed and R&D investments into better contraceptive options for both men and women. That's the only real thing that would actually decrease the amount of abortions, and it has. However, those same people pushing for anti-abortion legislation are usually the ones who also block sex ed and Planned Parenthood funding, when Planned Parenthood is doing way more work to decrease the number of abortions with family planning services than they ever would. And look, here's my olive branch to Ben. Let's go to an abortion clinic together. Let's go talk to doctors, one that you choose and one that I choose. Let's go dive deeper into this issue because it seems to me like you genuinely do care about this from an emotional perspective. So let's have an honest conversation. Maybe we can change people's minds. You know where to reach me.